Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start right off so I don't forget by reading the CLE code to begin for this panel. The letter P as in Patrick, T as in Thomas, X as in X-ray, 962. That is PTX 962. CLE codes aside, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Self-Advocacy panel. My name is Cara Dagostino, and I serve as the Assistant Dean for Academic Excellence and Bar Success, and I'm an Assistant Professor of Law here at Touro Law Center. This panel explores the role of self-advocacy through personal and familial perspectives, particularly how individuals navigate identity, disability, and disclosure in both their personal lives and professional environments. Through lived experiences, we will discuss the power, challenges, and impact of speaking openly about disability and how doing so can foster dignity, understanding, and inclusion. We have an incredible panel with us today that I am so excited to introduce to you. John Kelly is a 2024 graduate of Touro Law Center and currently an assistant town attorney in the town of Brookhaven. Owen Kelly is a self-advocate who brings to us a lived perspective that he is going to share. And Bret Parker is the executive director of the New York City Bar Association and co-chair of the Patient Council at the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Thank you all again for being here today and sharing with us. To begin, I'd like to invite John and Owen Kelly up to get us started.
First off, I have to thank Dr. Levine. We met a number of years ago when I was in his criminal law class, and there was a professor and student roundtable of sorts, and Dr. Levine mentioned that he does some work in education and particularly special education. So after the roundtable, I essentially accosted him as I was so excited to tell him about Owen and my family. We only spoke briefly because Dr. Levine is a true man of integrity, and if we shared this passion while I was in his class, we both felt it would be a little bit of a conflict. Cool, thank you. So semester ended, and I was incredibly eager to enter into his office and talk about all of our shared experiences. You know, I told him that my parents had jumped through many a hoop in order to make sure that Owen would ride the bus with both of his brothers. I'm one of his older brothers, and he has an older brother on top of me. So my parents marched into the school and literally laid down the law. Our dad is a fellow Touro graduate and an attorney, and they essentially told the school district that this is what we want out of Owen's education, and if they don't get it, the school's gonna end up on News Channel 12. So they got what they wanted, and now we have Owen. But Dr. Levine and I met quite often during my time at Touro, and I'm incredibly grateful for our relationship. What he does year in and year out at this conference is a testament to his hard work. He and I share an understanding that inclusion and advocacy are so key to so many people, and that there is a lot of work to be done. So Dr. Levine, thank you for having us, and I'm going to turn it over to Owen, and then I will be back. Go ahead, Owen.
Hi, my name is Owen, and I work in SBU, and I help John and my brother John, and he's the best.
Do you know how to switch?
It all begins, I'm a little baby. And my family then, I hang out with all my brothers and my sister, and we go out and have fun. My family now, I go to weddings, and my brother Tom, they get married, and we have fun, and he has a kid. And I have two of my best friends. One of them is a UFC fighter, and one of my best friend. Her name is Nicole, and she's my prom date. And we won states in World Member High School, and I'm the manager of the team, and it's the best thing ever. And after high school, I go to Pace with my boy John, and I'm the manager of the Pace team. And still, we hang out with all the Pace team and have fun, go to 9/11, and just hang out with all my friends and have fun in the pool. And I'm surfing in my talk, and I hang out with my friends. His name is Pat Fallon, and it's my favorite thing ever. And I'm the bestest uncle ever. And my boy Thomas have a kid, and we have fun and play together. His name is Miles, and he's the best kid ever. And I have a lot of cousins, friends. We have parties and have fun together. And my neighbors and my brothers, and we have lots of weddings to go to and parties in the neighborhood. And two of my best friends are getting married, and I'm the groomsman or the best man of the weddings, and I have fun with them. And I work in SBU Stony Brook equipment room with my boss, Anton Ciccone, and I work with all my friends and do my job. And I go to any sports. I go in the football stadium, and I have fun with my friends. And also, I work in Regina Brando Law, and she did come here for school too, and she's the best thing. And I am a DJ, and my name is Old Dog Money Slice. And I do the parties and any have fun. And I also help DJing in clubs in Boston. And I love to play golf with my brother Tom, John, and my dad at the Rock. And I do a cardboard contest in our house in the pool. And thank you.
As you can see, Owen is a product of his environment. The only thing I've ever done without Owen is, unfortunately, I have to go to work every day, and I can't bring him along with me, but everyone there knows who Owen is, because if you know me, then you know Owen. I essentially wear him on my sleeve. Growing up with Owen wasn't necessarily defined by limitations. It was defined by inclusion. Inclusion in school and sports, and above all, inclusion in our community. What I've come to realize is that inclusion shaped my life just as much as it shaped his. At this point in our lives, Owen is a pillar of the village that raised us, and so many of the people that were around growing up are often so eager to talk about their experiences with Owen. But in the beginning, Owen wasn't Owen in his full form as the 27-year-old lovely individual that he is now. He was just a 5-year-old with 2 older brothers, a baby sister, incredibly friendly neighbors, a wonderful extended family, and 2 parents who were just trying to raise 4 kids. Looking back, I learned that inclusion wasn't something that happened automatically. It happened when people understood what our parents were trying to accomplish. To put it simply, it happened when people got it. Early on, there were teachers, coaches, and mostly neighbors who got it, and those choices from people every day became the foundation of our childhood. The goal being to treat Owen the same way people treated John, me, and Thomas, our older brother. I can't stress enough how important our community was, and when people say it takes a village, it really does. They didn't see Owen as the kid with Down syndrome. They saw him as Owen. He was on the soccer team, he was on the baseball team, the lacrosse team, the basketball team, he was in the play at school, he was in chorus, he was at recess with his peers, and he was in class with his peers. These people included Owen because they were treating him like they treat everyone else. And those moments may have seemed small to those people, but it's really because they should. They seem small for me, they seem small for most people in this room, and there's no reason that should be any different for Owen. Regardless, every invitation quietly reinforced something important in our community, and it was that Owen belonged here. This message, repeated again and again over the years, helped build Owen's confidence, his independence, and his identity. I was reflecting and getting ready for this presentation, and I realized inclusion isn't just a policy, it's a culture. And this culture became contagious. If the soccer coach had him on the team, then the basketball coach had him on the team. And if the soccer and basketball coaches had him on the team, then the lacrosse coach had to have him on the team. It created a chain reaction. And if it wasn't obvious enough, one of the biggest forces in our life was sports. Sports gave Owen the opportunity to create relationships on and off the field, and the coaches who got it made a tremendous difference. Luckily, when the coach gets it, the best players on the team get it, and when they get it, the popular kids in school get it. So Owen was easily able to make the transition from the coolest kid on the team to the coolest kid in school. And this is really where Owen's confidence comes from. So I realized that the difference often comes down to people simply choosing to include someone. Owen has taken the experiences from his childhood, and he's built his own path into his own communities. Those early moments of inclusion didn't just help us grow, but they gave him the confidence to step into the world, build relationships, build friendships, and build a community around himself. Those social environments that welcomed him as a child prepared him to navigate adulthood with independence. So if there's one message I hope that people can take away from this, it's that inclusion matters more than we realize, and it's generally pretty easy. The small choices we make to invite someone in, give someone a chance, and to treat someone like they belong, it could shape entire lives. And it's easier than you think. Owen's story isn't just about Down syndrome or people with disabilities. It's about what happens when a community has a culture of inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you so much, Owen. Next, I'd like to invite up Bret Parker.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Levine and the staff here for putting on a great conference. I feel a little hoodwinked because last year I was disappointed that I was the last speaker in the morning between them and lunch. And then this year they break out this incredible family with the baby pictures and the nephew pictures and the DJ name, which I don't have any of that. I have no family with me, so I feel like I'm sort of at a disadvantage to start. But anyway, thanks so much for having me. So let me take you back to, well, first of all, the last panel made a point that dovetails nicely to what I want to talk about, which is disclosure for some people, no good will come of it. And I think that's something that's part of my story. So let me take you back 19 years. I'm 37 years old. I'm married, I have 2 young kids, I'm a lawyer at a big pharmaceutical company, and I notice a little tremor in my right hand, just a little tremor. I figured I must have carpal tunnel syndrome. It can't be anything serious. I go to the doctor. I don't even bring my wife. And long story short, I get diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And I'm 27, very young, barely any symptoms. Sorry, 37, barely any symptoms. And my first question is, am I going to die from this? Because I had no idea what it was. In my mind, it was like the disease for old people. They shake and they can't walk and they can't move at all. And so I immediately went into panic mode. And I thought to myself, how long am I going to be able to work? How long am I going to be able to drive? And worst case scenarios ran through my head. And so my tremor was very, very minor. And so the question I had for myself at that point was, do I tell anybody? No one really noticed it. It wasn't affecting my work, and I didn't want people to treat me differently. I didn't want anyone to feel bad for me. I didn't want someone to make decisions about my work life based on something that had nothing to do with my work. So I didn't tell anyone else for about 5 years. I told a very dear friend, a very good friend. I told my parents and told my siblings, and that's it. And I was working at my loft, at my corporate job, but everything was fine. And over time, the symptoms got a little bit worse. My hand would shake a little bit more. My leg was stiff. I looked like I had a limp. And my younger son made comments to me like, "Dad, what's going on with your hand?" I said, "It just does that sometimes." So I came to a point where I decided I had to start telling people. And I started to tell people one at a time. And it was brutal because I would get upset and they would get upset. And it was just exhausting conversation. So I talked to a friend of mine who was an editor at Forbes, and I asked him, could we figure out a way for me to disclose it? And interestingly enough, he thought that the main sort of interesting point about this was the keeping it secret at work. That disabilities was as what we call the last workplace secret. People talk about everything at work, but people were not, back then, we're not talking about diseases that you might not see. If someone had surgery or something visible, you get lots of comments and you feel comfortable, but if you get an invisible disability, you couldn't talk about it. So I actually wrote a blog, and I published it. He published it on the Forbes website, told everybody I had this, and then I sent it to everyone all at once. So that was pretty crazy. I went from having nobody know to having everybody know. And it felt good for me because I didn't have to have that sort of tough conversation. But actually, for me, it became very liberating because what was happening to me was my symptoms were actually getting worse from the stress of keeping it secret. Literally, it would make my hand shake more. Literally, it would make me stiffer. It made everything tougher. And so at that point, it was sort of a relief to tell people I had that. And it actually was helpful because my symptoms slowly got worse. As you can see, I move around a lot. By the way, if you're watching on Zoom, I'm like moving around in the square, and you never know where I'm going to be. So I hope I'm sort of roughly in the center. So what I decided to do once I went all in on telling people is I decided to try to make a little lemonade out of this lemon. And so I got involved with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. The first thing I did is I looked on their website, and I joined their Team Fox effort, which is a fundraising effort to raise money each year. And I would do one sports event. And so I did a run with my close friend who I told about it, and everybody donated because they felt bad for me, which is fine. I was okay with it there. And I guilted them into donating money for me to do a short run. And then each year I would do one event that would help raise money for Parkinson's. In the meantime, I'll come back to that. In the meantime, I started to sort of talk to people more. And as I sort of told more people about this, everyone would come to me with their medical conditions. Someone would come to me and said, I have MS, I don't know how to tell anybody. I'm a salesperson and I have a cancer diagnosis, but I'm afraid I'm going to get treated differently at work. And so I became like a counselor, not a legal counselor, because I'm a lawyer, but I can't practice law all over the place. So I started telling people, giving people advice on people ask me, like, do you disclose or not disclose? And so for some people, I would say, if I were you, I would disclose. Maybe your symptoms are going to get worse, and you're feeling like you need an accommodation. So in that case, you definitely want to disclose so you can get the help you need. Even if you don't want an accommodation, maybe you don't want people thinking that something worse is happening to you at work. That maybe the symptoms that you're having, they're not interfering with work, but they're slowing you down a little bit, and it'd be better if your boss knew. Some people want to tell their employers because they want to get ahead of it before someone does something negative because of their disability. So if you're going to get treated differently because of your disability, better to put them on notice that you have one, so you're sort of protected by the law for being treated differently because of your disability. And for some people, it's they have a good relationship with their boss, and they want to be able to have an honest conversation with them. And in those situations, it works out well. And I have to say, for everybody, it's very different. For some people, that worked out great. For me, it worked out great, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But some people, it doesn't work out great. One salesperson who I spoke to told his boss that he had a medical condition, and his boss really cared about him, and the first thing he did was to try to take some of his accounts away from him. And he said he was trying to protect him, he was trying to help him, he didn't want him to have the stress of traveling, he didn't want to have the pressure. But that's not the boss's decision to make. That's your decision to make. It's your decision whether you want to tell someone. It's your decision whether you need accommodation. It's not their decision to treat you differently because of your disability. So my disability has gotten worse over time. So I used to think of it only as sort of the shaking and the sort of visible symptoms, but I have other symptoms. I actually have almost no sense of smell, which actually at home is a great trait because I get to clean the litter box. I sweat like crazy. You know, some days I get home from work, I've sweat through 3 layers of clothes when it's 50 degrees out. I just tell people I run a little hot. You know, my symptoms have, my memory sometimes, I'll have a name that's on the tip of my tongue. It's a name I use all the time, a word I use all the time. I just can't grab it. And so for me, it has made it better for me. It has made it easier for me to function at work. I can now tell people when my phone goes off every 2 hours and 45 minutes for my pill timer, I don't feel bad telling them, oh, I'm sorry, it's time to take my pills. You know, I feel much more comfortable about it. And I've gotten more involved with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So I did more fundraising events. I did a triathlon because I was scared of the water. I did a skydive because I decided I wanted to just be heavy and jump, and that'd be an easy way to raise money. And then the biggest event I've done so far is the World Marathon Challenge. I ran 7 marathons on 7 continents over 7 straight days. And that was great because I raised a lot of money, and the Washington Post did a story about me, and it made more awareness for the work that I was doing and the Fox Foundation is doing. And then finally, more recently, I've done I co-chair the Patient Council of the Fox Foundation, and so I do a lot of lobbying. I'd never been to Congress. I'd never met my senator or my representatives. I'd never been to Capitol Hill, even when I was in elementary school. And last year I went and I met one of my 2 senators. I met some Congress people and some staff. Next week I'm going to go again for a second visit. And there I was able to sort of make a difference, to help lobby for more funding for research, a ban on chemicals that cause Parkinson's, more education and awareness. And so for me, disclosure has actually made it better for me. It's a silver lining on a really crappy disease. I met some incredible people, and I'm hearing about some of the conversations in the earlier panels about education and work and being treated differently at work. It's made me much more empathetic. Before I had this condition, I wasn't very sympathetic. When someone said, I got to leave early to go to the doctor, frankly, I wasn't a jerk, but I felt like a jerk inside because I'm like, why do they have to go to the doctor in the middle of the day? And so I became a little less of a jerk. I became a lot more understanding of when someone said they had to take off an afternoon. And now I sort of go all the way the other direction. I tell people, if you're not feeling well, take the day off. Like you're not going to do anyone any good coming in if you feel really sick. If you're not able to work, go home and get better. But if you can and some people, they can get through the day, but they just have to make adjustments. And I'm all for that. And the COVID pandemic actually has helped. For a lot of people, it's created opportunities to balance when you have to be in person, when you have to be remote. It's made it easier for me. My job right now is as executive director of the New York City Bar Association. I basically have a lot of in-person events. But on a Monday when there's nothing going on, and I want to sort of take a rest from being quote on and having to not be moving around so much and not tremoring. It's nice to be able to do that from home. So anyway, so for me, disclosure has been a real silver lining, and I'm really appreciative of the friends and the family who've been supportive of me, and to all of you for being here. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bret. So we do have time for audience questions, which I am very excited for. But before we get to that, I'm going to read our end CLE code. It is B as in boy, D as in dog, K 854. That is BDK 854. So we have our CLE code. All right.
I'm also going to ask that if the members of the audience have any questions, just please wait for the microphone. That way people on Zoom can hear you as well.
Thank you so much. All right, I will open it up to audience questions.
Thank you, Bret. I'm from Finland. I'm Evelyn, and I wanted to know what was the acceptance rate regarding when you were diagnosed and the people around you, how did they accept you? Yeah.
So the question about how people reacted and whether they accepted me when I disclosed, for the most part, everyone was really supportive. I got lots of nice notes. The first run that I did after I disclosed myself, the company that I was working for at the time actually sponsored me and paid for paid to donate to the event. My boss at the time was sort of awkward about it. He didn't know, he actually wasn't sure he was just awkward. He didn't know how to deal with me. And then one other person came up to me and said, Bret, like I just read your thing. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I said, well, that's your problem. That's not my problem. I did my part. So, but for the most part, people are really accepting. Now, I know as my symptoms got worse, it gets more noticeable, and people still, I think, feel a little funny around me at times. But what I try to do is, first of all, welcome any questions. There's really no topic off. It's not okay to talk about. I answer any question. I've learned a lot from Michael Fox. Humor is really helpful for me. It helps people feel more comfortable to talk to me about it. It makes me more comfortable to talk to them. So I do try to use humor and candid discussions whenever I can. But for the most part, people were really understanding. But the tricky thing is for them to be understanding when it matters, on the practical things, like, to understand when I have a doctor's appointment and I have to be out for 2 hours, or to understand when, I don't feel comfortable getting up and speaking because I'm really feeling symptomatic. So that's where the sort of the rubber hits the road.
Thank you.
I have more of a comment than a question in that I appreciate what you're saying in regard to people's acceptance of it after you disclosed. My doctoral dissertation was in the employment of people with disabilities and the openness of employers to hiring people with disabilities, and that was 20 years ago. But in my experience, too, I find that when people disclose, the bigger question is, what do the people around them understand of what it is that's been disclosed? So, I worked with clients back at that time that may have had learning disabilities or developmental disabilities, among other things. And when they disclosed that, I think the biggest hurdle was the boss thinking to themselves, so what does that mean? Does that mean that they can't do something? Or does that mean, and I think that's one step that sometimes doesn't occur. It's the disclosure can take place, but then it creates this fear among everyone saying, well, what does that mean? And there has to be this component to what does that mean? How does that translate into my everyday tasks or my everyday needs? And that's what makes it even more difficult or complicated.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. My question is, as a position as a person in a leadership position who is also an executive, so I have to make decisions and policy, and I have to enforce things as well. But I'm the Chief Diversity Officer and Associate Counsel at the Office of General Services for New York State. So people come to me to disclose, and then I wear two hats. I am a lawyer who has to ensure that we are meeting our compliance and our obligations and that everybody is safe, including my organization and the person talking to me. And then I wear the hat as the Chief Diversity Officer, where I have a lot more empathy and compassion. And so then I am always caught in this position of like, am I here to enforce the law, or am I here to change culture? And then the second part of that question is the disclosure part, and in trying to change culture, I have to give information about people away to a certain limitation. So I struggle with that balance, and just I'm very curious to hear from folks with lived experience as to what do you expect of me, like in an individual situation. If you were to come to me, do you want me to be I guess like the strong arm or the soft arm, both? Like how can I best serve folks who come and disclose really important information to me, sometimes just to vent, but also to try to change culture?
That's a great question. I mean, sometimes I feel like the law and humanity, the employment law and humanity don't really line up too well. Like, you want to be a human being with your colleagues at work, but the law puts certain restrictions on you, and you want to make people feel more welcoming and understanding, but there's privacy, and so I can't answer specifically what you should do because I'm going to duck the question a little bit, but I do think that the two can live together, and I think letting the person who's coming to you drive the conversation from because now I'm in the position of having to be on the other end of this, and so I think finding out from them. First of all, why are they telling you? What are they looking for? I think making sure they're driving the process. Like you said, they may be trying to vent, and in which case I think they've vented, and then you're done. And unless they've asked for an accommodation, or they're complaining about the way someone's treating them, or there's something dangerous happening in the workplace, you don't have any duties to tell anybody other than just to sit and accept that information. But once they start needing accommodation or wanting, or they feel like they've been treated differently, then your hat changes a little bit. But yeah, the employment laws are sometimes like the worst when it comes to trying to be a good person at work.
Hi, Ben Topper here from the Chief Disability Office for New York State. This question is for Owen. It looks like you're doing 6 million things every week, and I'm curious how you decide what you don't want to do.
I don't know.
There's not many things Owen doesn't like doing, and he's kind of a yes man. So if he's invited somewhere, he's going to take up that opportunity to go and. Sorry, Owen's going to take the opportunity to go and do whatever it is. Essentially, he's invited to do, and yeah, the opportunity to say no doesn't necessarily present itself as often as a simple invitation to bring him along or invite him just because he's him. So it's generally yes. And keeping the time to do things, he makes it work. He's very impressive.
Yeah.
We have wonderful parents and wonderful family that works on getting them to those places and making sure all of the things work out. Good?
Yes.
Pretty good.
Thank you for a very interesting and informative presentation, and especially about disclosure. As an autistic person, I also support other autistic people and others people who are otherwise neurodivergent in disclosure. And what so often comes with a disclosure, but is often unsaid, is the request for some sort of greater understanding or an accommodation of some sort. So the way I look at it is that with a disclosure, fortunately or unfortunately, it's also up to us to be an educator. Is it okay if I wear this hat in the office? Why? Because these lights are really bright and they hurt my eyes. And I could do that, I could say that because I know what autism means to me. In this case, recessed lighting fixtures and I don't get along. And in that way I would disclose and then give the reason why I'm disclosing. Or actually the disclosure becomes the reason why I'm advocating for a particular accommodation or understanding. And Bret, you mentioned that in your last comment about somebody maybe looking for an accommodation. We probably are, or we wouldn't feel a need to disclose. Thank you.
You know, it's funny. You got me thinking about one accommodation I requested, which created awareness. And actually, I think in my mind, having disclosed now gives me the permission to educate whenever I feel like it. So I take advantage of that. But one weird accommodation I needed was I speak at a lot of events in our building, and there's a podium that's there. And I had to ask the staff that it was really important to make sure that they lock the wheels on the podium because I move a lot. And I don't know if you remember Sean Spicer in the Saturday Night Live skit with them moving the podium, but I had to ask them that it was really important that the wheels get locked, because otherwise I'm moving the podium all over the place. And it sounded like a petty request, but it was an opportunity for me to explain that I had Parkinson's and why it was important to me. So for me, the disclosure is a permission slip to educate. And so I think educating about I wouldn't have thought anything about the hat, but I think that's your opportunity to tell them why.
Hello, my name is Jolie, and along with my colleague next to me, Joanna, we teach the first year law students here, and we teach legal writing. And it's interesting, Mr. Parker, you said roping together the humanity and the law, dealing with accommodation and disability. And as part of a first year law student's curriculum, we assign them massive legal writing assignments. And the assignment that they're all working on now is the ADA and accommodations and reassignment, and whether that's mandatory or not, the circuit split, dealing with it in the courts. And it's very interesting to see our first year students, first of all, becoming aware. Every first year student in this school is now becoming aware of the importance of these issues, but also struggling with the humanity aspect of it versus the law and what the courts are guiding them to do. So I just wanted to make that comment that our students are working with this, they're understanding, they're being made aware in their first year of law school. And my question actually for Owen is, I'm a big sports fan too, so what was your favorite sport growing up? And then what's your favorite part about your job now at Stony Brook?
My favorite sport is basketball and lacrosse, and for my favorite part of work, just hang out with all my friends and teammates, all the basketball team, baseball team, football, and yeah, it's fun. Thank you.
Hi. In my view, the best thing that ever happened to Parkinson's was Michael J. Fox. And I will illustrate why I say that. A few months ago, when MSNBC did a segment on autism, they brought on a woman who was not neurodivergent, but was neurotypical, and had written a book on autism. And my personal reaction, and of course, I say this with disclaimers attached, is that they have at least 2 high-profile people on their staff who are neurodivergent that they could have tapped. MSNBC is powerful enough to have gotten John Elder Robinson or Temple Grandin, but instead, they got a woman who was an authority on autism, creating yet another impression of othering us, and in fact, indeed, pathologizing us. So that is why I say what I said about Michael J. Fox, because what we need, I feel, are more celebrities, more high-profile people to step forward and acknowledge that they're on the spectrum, because until they do, we're not going to get a true picture of how wide the spectrum is and how much of a contribution people on the spectrum make. And I thank you.
Hi, my name's Maria, and I'm with Walmart. And in the conversations this morning, we've talked a lot about accommodations, culture of yes, right? My question is, from an advice perspective, so I work for a center of excellence focused on accessibility for Walmart, and they come to us a lot, and I am a lawyer in a non-legal role. So they come to us a lot for advice on what do I do if X, right? And so because the accommodations process is so onerous, most people want to avoid it. But then the legal side of it is you really should have the formal accommodation, but we absolutely understand the onerous nature of it, right? So where do you draw the line, or where would you, and this might not be something that you can answer right now, it might be a point of conversation during the day, but like, where do we draw the line between a job adjustment and a formal accommodation, fully understanding that accommodation processes suck? So.
I mean, I think you can ask, as someone who's sort of been through this, I mean, I think you can ask for adjustments, and if there's no disagreement with you and your boss or the management, then you don't have to go through that. I know it's a very burdensome, accommodation process. I think it's best when it doesn't go to that point, because then it becomes very technical and sometimes a little adversarial. And I think it should always be a process of trying to get to yes for the employee and for the company or the employer. And so I think there's plenty of room to not get to the nuclear option of a formal back and forth of specific accommodations. So that may not have answered your question, but I'm happy to.
Of paperwork, it's where we are. Like what you answered is where we are. It's that balance of the months of paperwork versus, right? The one point that I always make to people is think about if your boss changes and then you have to re-up the conversation, right? And so that's the problem with the job adjustments, because they're informal, they can easily go away, whereas accommodations technically don't. So it's just striking the balance, which has been difficult.
I do think it's important that one not discourage someone from asking for an accommodation. I mean, it's a tough process, but if they want it, then that's their right, and then the responsibility is to convince that manager that what they're doing is not just a hoop they have to jump through, but is actually an important thing for them to keep their team engaged, retain their talent, and that becomes now not the employee's responsibility, it's the manager's responsibility and the HR's responsibility to make sure that they don't telegraph that the person should be discouraged from invoking a process.
Hi, my name is Regina Skyer. My question to the lawyers and the law professors, what is the difference between providing a reasonable accommodation in the workplace as opposed to fundamentally altering the nature of the work and the work assignment? What do the courts say? Is there a bright line test? Is it all factual?
Hi, is that on? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not from this country, so I don't know your legislation particularly well at all. But in the UK, when we look at reasonable adjustments, that's exactly what it says. It has to be reasonable, and I do the work kind of like you do. I have my own company, and I have a company and do my own support autistic people within the workplace, and the companies who support them as well at the same time. And the way I look at it is that if someone discloses to you, the hat you put on is that you look at what that person needs at that time and what is reasonable for you to do at that time. And making a step towards making it better for that person is what's reasonable, not looking directly at the legislation, because the legislation is like taking a gun to someone's head. It's beating someone with a stick. Trying to work towards the legislation is the first thing for my mind. And if everyone makes those tiny little reasonable steps to making it better for that particular person and for the company, because the company has to be able to, which is why I've come back to your point, the company has to be, or institution has to be able to undertake its primary purpose. Otherwise, that is never going to work. Okay.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I was going to comment as well. I'm not an attorney, but I do a lot of work with around situations like this, and I think that one of the challenges is employers don't always define the essential functions of a job, and that makes it difficult to determine whether the work can be modified or if an accommodation is necessary. You know, there's a lot of jobs where you know, an accommodation might not be possible because the person has to perform essential functions that would be directly impacted by the accommodation. So employers' ability to identify essential functions up front is a key to being able to determine if an accommodation is feasible or if some type of job modification or job change or reallocation of tasks is feasible.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of quick notes for the record. So John, I recall that first meeting that we discussed disability rights and inclusion. And John is right that we're very careful to maintain academic integrity. But for the record, John did get the A+ anonymously in my criminal law class. So my criminal law students are here. You might want to speak to John afterwards, see how to do that. John also was our founding president of our DALSA, our Disabled and Allied Law Student Association here at Touro, who are co-sponsors. And Nicole, thank you for co-sponsoring this event and for your participation. And Bret, you did great too. So sorry to put you on the spot with such wonderful speakers, but it's always great to have you back, my law school classmate. So thank you for another terrific panel. We'll take about 5 minutes now and we'll rejoin for our judges panel.